Good morning, guys. It's Tuesday, October 8th, 5:25 a.m. Central Time. Grain markets are lower across the board this morning. December corn futures down 3 3/4 at 422 1/4. November soybeans down 16 3/4 at 1017 1/4. December Chicago wheat down 4 at 588 1/2. December Kansas City wheat down 4 at 599 1/4. December spring wheat down 2 at 642 1/4. Mackenzie, we've got a whole bunch of people that watch on YouTube that are not subscribed to the channel. And if they are not subscribed, what should they do?
They should subscribe. I don't see why they shouldn't.
You should subscribe. We're rolling in on 17,000 subscribers. I remember when I had 10 subscribers. So I'm happy you guys are here. But I think more than half of you guys who watch are not subscribed. So hit the subscribe button. Maybe we get to 17,000 this week. Before we get started into our show, there's one headline overnight that popped up, which is a big deal. We didn't get a chance to do a full story on it. But China's back from holiday. They came back from this vacation. And the trade had thought, I think traders, not just in the grain markets, but in a lot of markets, had thought that we were going to see some details regarding their fiscal stimulus. And as it turns out, they provided very few details. So the stock market in China, which had been strong, backed off quite a bit. And I wouldn't be shocked if somebody was selling soybeans this morning because of these lack of details regarding the stimulus. We know that we rallied on the stimulus headline. I think that was just last week or 2 weeks ago, and now maybe losing a little bit. There's a few other reasons that soybeans are down this morning, and we'll get to that. Maybe this first story is one of them.
So dry conditions continue to impact Brazilian soybean planting. According to well-followed private group Ag Rural, as of last Thursday, Brazilian soybean planting was 4.5% complete. During the same week last year, 10% of the expected area had been planted. Planting in Mato Grosso, Brazil's top soybean-producing state, is the slowest in 9 years. The majority of Brazilian states have been dealing with hot and dry weather.
Okay, we're going to get to weather in a second. Before we get started with weather, I wanted to do some kind of contextual type stuff this morning because the Brazilian growing season is starting. Let's look at some supply type stuff and some export type stuff. So Brazil is projected to be the world's top soybean producer this year. USDA has the crop pegged at 169 million metric tons, which would eclipse the previous record from 2 years ago of 162. For reference, the U.S. crop was 125 million this year, according to USDA. Brazil is projected to account for 58% of all global soybean exports this year. So they're going to export, if USDA is correct and the crop is good, more than double what the U.S. will export this year. So that's why Brazil is such a huge deal when it comes to the soybean market and price action. They're also a big deal when it comes to corn, not as big of a deal. Third largest corn producer on the planet, expected to account for 10.5% of all global corn production. The U.S. is still head and shoulders above everybody else when it comes to corn production. China's number 2, and Brazil would be a distant third. Corn exports, Brazil's number 2, almost 26% of all global corn exports. U.S. is still number 1. It was either last year, 2 years ago, that Brazil exported more than the U.S. And if you were to run into a situation in the future where the U.S. had a light crop, Brazil would probably export more than us, but we've got a big crop this year, apparently. And when it comes to weather, here's the deal. It's dry, and it's been very dry, and that's why soybean planting is behind. There's no rain on the radar this morning, barring some far southern areas. They do grow soybeans in the far south. But the forecast is indicating that the rains are coming back, not necessarily in the next 5 days. The Euro and the GFS are pretty much in agreement here that it's still going to be dry-ish over the next 5 days. Then you go to this 5 to 10 day period out through October 18th, and the Euro is much wetter than the GFS. You've got a big contrast here. The Euro has these widespread rains across almost all of Brazilian soybean country. GFS is a little bit more spotty. Then you go to the extended GFS out through the 16-day period, October 24th, and it's wet everywhere. So I think the trade is very much convinced that the rains are coming back. The wet season is going to begin as it typically does, and that this crop is going to get planted and that things are going to accelerate. That's another reason, in my opinion, at least, why the soybean market's down this morning. You've got China and this lack of guidance on the stimulus. You got rains coming back to Brazil, and we got a couple other reasons too.
Soybean harvest was the focus for U.S. farmers last week. U.S. soybeans were 47% harvested nationally through Sunday, compared to 26% the prior week and 34% on average. Harvest pace is the second fastest in the last 10 years. States that have harvested 50% of the crop or more include Arkansas, Iowa, Louisiana, Minnesota, Mississippi, North Dakota, South Dakota, Tennessee, and Wisconsin. Soybean conditions were rated 63% good to excellent nationally as of Sunday. Sunday. The U.S. corn crop was 30% harvested compared to 21% the previous week and 27% on average. States that have harvested 50% of the crop or more include Kansas, Kentucky, Missouri, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Texas. Corn conditions were rated 64% good to excellent nationally.
I know conditions don't really matter this time of year, but they've held up unusually well, which is, I mean, maybe bodes well for crop prospects. The USDA says the crop's there. So farmers harvested 21% of the soybean crop in 1 week. That's pretty impressive. The corn number was not as fast as people had anticipated. I guess the trend is that the soybean growing season has kind of just been totally pushed forward a little bit. People are planting soybeans earlier and therefore harvesting soybeans earlier. Second fastest harvest pace of the last 10 years. Corn harvest is not, we're not slow. We're still very good. And there is absolutely no weather obstacle in front of us at all. So corn and soybean harvest is going to move very, very quickly. Even the extended forecasts out through the end of the month are very dry, which leads me to maybe another reason why the soybean market's under pressure. The Mississippi River is going to be back to restrictive type levels at Memphis by third week in October. And this is the worst time of year for that to happen. This is when we're supposed to be shipping a lot of soybeans, late October, November, December. If we get back to restrictive levels on the river and you get to these, load restrictions, drafts, that sort of thing, that's a problem. So you got a lot going against the soybean market this morning.
Really quick, we're going to touch on wheat. U.S. winter wheat, the crop was 51% planted nationally through Sunday compared to 39% the previous week and 52% on average. Analysts had projected planting to be 54% complete. States with 60% or more of the crop planted include Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Nebraska, South Dakota, and Washington. USDA estimates that the crop is 25% emerged versus 25% on average, and the USDA will begin national winter wheat ratings sometime during the next few weeks.
I think the stat last week on the drought monitor was 44% of winter wheat areas were experiencing drought. So I don't know what the ratings are going to say. It'll be interesting to see. All right, now we can do our ad.
Alrighty, so if you guys are not subscribed to our premium content, you sure need to do so. Can you tell me about yesterday's premium video, Joe?
Just because you guys are busy, and I know you're busy, you're in the truck, you're in the combine, you're very busy. It's a busy time of year. My phones don't ring a whole lot this time of year. Don't neglect your marketing. I get messages all the time from subscribers. Joe, I missed your last recommendation because I was busy. You can't afford to forget about your marketing. You just can't. This is the thing that people struggle with the most. I did a review of corn and soybean marketing yesterday, ran through every sale that I've advised for this year and also for 2025. Some of the reasoning, a whole bunch of charts, graphics, Excel sheets. Don't neglect your marketing. Farming, for most of you guys, growing the crop is the easy part. The business side, the budgeting, the marketing is the complicated part and the part that causes the most headaches. So don't forget about it. If you guys are looking for a simpler approach, give our deal a shot. You can subscribe. Go to standardgrain.com. It's a $50 per month subscription. You can sign up on your phone. It's a piece of cake. So if you're busy, you can get it done this morning. It'll take you a minute. We do Apple Pay, Google Pay, all that stuff. You'll get our morning email at 5 a.m. Central Time every day. You'll get our premium videos every day. Everything is super accessible on your phone. There's no login instructions. It's literally just 1 or 2 clicks to play everything. So give that deal a shot this morning, guys.
Russian missiles damaged 2 vessels carrying Ukrainian grain in recent days. A ballistic missile damaged a ship in the Odessa region on Monday while it was docking to load grain. The attack killed 1 person and injured 5. On Sunday, another vessel carrying Ukrainian grain was also damaged in the Odessa region. However, there were no injuries reported from that attack. Last month, in neutral waters near Ukraine, a Russian missile struck a grain ship bound for Egypt. Since the war began back in 2022, Russia has damaged 20 civilian vessels.
Yeah, we've seen this kind of on and off. Russia, Ukraine are, of course, a big deal. We've had this chart or graphic several times. Both countries combined expected to account for 29% of all global wheat exports. I think the weather is probably a bigger deal for the Black Sea because we've had so many of these, missile strikes and Russia hit that, Ukraine hit this. I think the weather's the bigger thing.
Russia's ag minister is urging farmers to pray for rain. The message comes as Russia's winter wheat crop is at risk due to dry conditions. Several regions across Russia have declared a state of emergency due to severe drought. Additionally, Ukrainian attacks are targeting some of Russia's major grain-producing areas. Some of those areas are now under Ukraine's control. Russia's ag ministry estimates this season's total grain production at 132 million metric tons, down 11% from last season.
Yeah, we'll see what USDA has to say about the matter on Friday. We've got a report coming up. When it comes to production, they've been really dry. I've got a good map from our friends at World Weather on the left here. So there's a lot of wheat production in between the two seas there in both Russia and Ukraine, and it's been very, very dry. So I guess the ag minister says pray for rain, and they need it because that's some high density wheat production country there.
U.S. soybean shipments were well above pre-report trade expectations last week. USDA reported that 53 million bushels of soybeans were inspected for export during the week ending October 3rd. The print was up 110% from the previous week and up 2% compared to the same week last year. Corn shipments were near the lower end of expectations at 37 million bushels. The print was down 19% compared to the previous week, but up 16% versus the same week last year. And then wheat shipments were also near the lower end of expectations at 13 million bushels. The print was down 34% from the previous week, but up 19% versus the same week last year.
There's your spike in soybean shipments, and you're going to continue to see strength in soybean shipments here. My fear, of course, goes back to the river, and that we're going to see restrictive levels, and anything that's restrictive is just bad for pricing. It's bad for basis. It's bad for the market. It's bad for demand. The other thing about soybeans is that, the U.S. shipping window or sales window is shorter than it used to be because the Brazilian crop has gotten so big. Corn shipments were actually pretty good seasonally, and wheat shipments, I guess, not great, but not horrible either.
USDA reported a couple flash sales yesterday. U.S. exporters sold 6 million bushels of corn to Mexico for delivery during the current marketing year, and exporters also sold 6 million bushels of soybeans to unknown destinations for delivery during the current marketing year.
Nothing hugely substantial, but good to see. What did cattle do yesterday?
They were mostly higher. Live cattle were 2 cents to $1.47 higher. Feeders were down 77 cents to $2.55 higher. Box beef was up. Choice ended the day at $305.93. That was up $3.35. And select ended the day at $289.33. That was up $1.72.
Outside markets, U.S. dollars about flat to a little bit lower. Stocks are higher. The S&P is up 20. The Dow Jones is up 40. Bonds are flat. Crude oil is down $1.50 in the November WTI at 75.60 last trade. Have a great day, guys. We'll talk to you on Wednesday.